that are not being picked up by the crawler well. Or, it could be that actually like some JavaScript issue is actually pestering this website and prevents us from seeing the content, which would be that we would see the website's pages and then we would crawl them. And then we would find that they're all having no content or the same content. And then we would deduplicate them and remove the duplicate pages. But I didn't know what it might be. So let's jump into the problem as I saw it. Okay, so here we have a website that exhibits this particular problem. So it's clearly some sort of cheese shop, and it has different kinds. And then you can like jump into the different categories. You can click on the different products. Great. But they say only the homepage shows up. But why is that? I don't understand. Like, so the slash French cheese, that looks fine to me. So let's actually start with looking at the robots.txt. That's a bit strange, but okay. So the robots.txt might not contain anything, or it might not be present. So let's actually see what happens on the network when we try to go to the robots.txt. So the network tab in your developer tools, and you can access them by either figuring it out from the menu, or you right-click to inspect element or whatever that is in your specific browser, and then you get into the developer tools. Then you can click on the network tab, and then I can go to robots.txt. And that seems fine to me. It's a GET request. It comes back with a 200. It does not seem to be coming back with an actual robots.txt, but that's not a problem. So this is the HTML side for the index. So this is probably a single page application that serves the index HTML for all pages, and then JavaScript determines what happens on the page. So let's actually have a look at the network tab one more time to get a better feeling for what's actually happening when we are going to the home page. So let's go to the home page here. And as we can see, there's a bunch of JavaScript being loaded. That's fine. That happens quite early on. And then it loads some file. This looks like some sort of configuration file. Yeah, so here we see Emmentaler. So it loads some sort of backend data to then construct this piece of content here. And I think that's generally fine. We can confirm this hunch that it's a JavaScript single page application by looking into the original response. So what's the side code that actually gets delivered? And we see like there's no content in here. If I were to go in and search for Emmentaler, I don't find that. So the content clearly comes from JavaScript. So I thought maybe this might actually be a JavaScript problem. So I looked into what happens here, and I looked into it from other angles as well, but I couldn't really figure anything out. So what you can do is you can use all sorts of tools, including local tunnel or ngrok, to actually get a publicly visible URL of this. And that's exactly what I'll do right now. So I'm going to just quickly set that up in a separate window. You don't really need to know how that works. That's the task for your developers that you don't really need to deal with. But now I have a publicly available URL. So I can go to this URL, and I see the same website. So that works. Great. Because I now have a public URL, I can go to the mobile friendly test. If I Google for the mobile friendly test, conveniently enough, I get this helpful one box. So I can throw in the one box. I can run a test just to see if we can see the content, if the JavaScript can be executed by Googlebot. So now we are waiting for the test to run and finish. Hopefully that's going to happen soon. Oh, come on. Why has it gotten stuck? I don't like that it got stuck. My computer is acting up a little bit today, so let's reload. Fetching page and running tests. Processing requests. Yay! The loading bar does its thing. This could be because the page is unavailable or blocked by robots.txt. That's a bit strange, isn't it? So there might actually be a robots.txt issue here after all. But page cannot be reached. Interesting problem. So we might actually go in here, and where's the cheese shop? I think this is the one. And we might actually be able to fix the robots.txt. So if we were to actually fix the robots.txt and allow Googlebot to access it, we should not run into strange issues, but I think we still are for some reason, and that's an interesting one. And I can't understand why we are running into this problem, right? So what happens if I actually open this page in an incognito window? Because there is a robots.txt, it should allow us to do things. So why does it not allow us to do that? So if I go to this page here, I get the robots.txt. And this robots.txt looks fine as well. That's a bit strange. Okay, so something fishy is going on here with the navigations. Something is happening that takes over the way that any kind of client, any kind of robot would interact with things, and I was wondering why that is. So if I go to the robots.txt level, everything is fine. So it must be something else. And that led me to wonder what happens if I actually, that's the website for later, what happens if I actually do one of these navigations? Can we see what happens? So I might click on French cheese to go to /French. Camembert, very, very good. And there's like a bunch of stuff happening here, but we don't really care about that. What we do care about, though, is the network layer of this. So we go to French, and then we see the response comes from a service worker. Now, what is a service worker? A service worker is a really handy piece of JavaScript that allows this website to also work offline. So if I were to go into this lovely little setting here and say, like, we're offline now, we can't actually access any other pages, we would still see some content. There's clearly something broken in the service worker, but at least like it doesn't do anything. It just gives us some content back. So there is a service worker that is a piece of JavaScript between me interacting with the browser and the actual network doing its thing. So some JavaScript executes and some JavaScript controls over what content is being loaded here instead of actually going to the browser. So that makes me wonder, did this website actually think about setting up the server correctly? Because you need to make sure that the server is set up correctly to actually respond to these requests when the service worker is not installed. We can verify this by going into the application tab. We see there's a service worker being installed and running. Interesting. But when we say bypass for network, that means that we are now not using the service worker. Like the JavaScript can't control what happens in the browser anymore, and we can actually go straight to the network and straight to the server. So now we're asking for French, and we get a 404. That's not great. That shouldn't happen. So the service worker works and actually fixes a problem that we created by not configuring the server properly. This is not a JavaScript problem. JavaScript actually made it work for the user. It just couldn't handle all the cases. So this does not work well for bots and for crawlers. So it has created a solution in a way, but not a complete solution, and it doesn't solve all the problems that we're having. So we need to find a better way of actually doing that. And the way that I would do that right now is I would set up what's called a single page application server that actually serves things the way that they're supposed to be. And when I go to French, it should still serve just the main content, and then the JavaScript needs to figure out that this is French cheese. So now I bypass the network and it still works. I can double check that this is actually working correctly by opening an incognito window and going to that on the incognito window. So we learned a lesson today. It's not always JavaScript. JavaScript actually kind of saved us from ourselves, right? Because what JavaScript did here is it created this additional safety net in the browser that if a user goes from the homepage to any of the subcategories like the French cheese or the world cheese, then it actually still serves the content properly. It just does not work when there is no service worker involved. And service workers, unfortunately, are being skipped in search engines because they don't really make sense for search engines. So that's why this is actually broken. But it was not only broken for search engines, right? Because when you go to the homepage, that's when the service worker is being installed in the browser, and that's when it takes over the broken navigation because the broken server setup. So if I were to send you a link to the French cheese, and you would not have been to the homepage of this website before, and you would also see a 404, So this needed to be fixed on the server side, and it was not a JavaScript problem, but it looked like one.